In this video, we uncover one of the darkest and most shocking turns ever to hit Fairmont Crest. When a mysterious young man appears at the gates, claiming to be the long-lost son of Bill, the perfect illusion of harmony inside the Dupree world begins to crack. Secrets buried for decades rise to the surface, exposing betrayals that were never meant to be known. What begins as a family reunion quickly spirals into chaos, threatening to destroy reputations, relationships, and lives. Fairmont Crest has faced many scandals before: affairs, power struggles, even death, but nothing like this. The arrival of this lost son does not bring healing, it brings destruction. As truth collides with deception, Danny's marriage falls apart, Andre's loyalty is tested, and Anita fears the return of a curse that has haunted her family for generations. Every smile hides suspicion, every conversation holds danger, and every corner of Fairmont Crest echoes with ghosts of regret. Stay tuned as we break down how one revelation sets off a chain reaction of deceit, guilt, and heartbreak that will push every character to their breaking point. This is not just another story of a family secret, this is the beginning of the end for those who dared to believe they could control fate. Welcome to Beyond the Gates 2025, where every truth comes with a price, and every reunion is a warning. The quiet perfection of Fairmont Crest had always been an illusion, one polished and repainted over years of secrets, ambition, and betrayal. The Dupree family had survived scandals before: marriages collapsing under infidelity, fortunes rebuilt after public humiliation, even deaths that still haunted those halls, but nothing prepared them for the shock of the young man who arrived one fog-heavy morning claiming to be Bill's son. His name was Julian, a name that seemed ordinary until whispers began to circulate about where he had come from, who had raised him, and what he truly wanted. For Bill, who had spent years rebuilding his life after a career-destroying affair and losing Danny's trust, Julian's sudden appearance reopened a wound he had buried decades ago. In his youth, Bill was a different man: reckless, charming, always dancing between danger and pleasure. He had worked as a journalist covering political corruption and found himself entangled with a woman who was married to a powerful attorney with links to the Dupree empire. Their brief but explosive relationship ended in disaster when the woman vanished after confessing she was pregnant. Bill searched for her, but she disappeared without a trace, and he was told years later that she and the baby had died during childbirth. Now, standing in the same community he once admired from afar, Julian carried papers, old letters, and a quiet fury that shook every part of Bill's existence. The timing could not have been worse. Danny was already spiraling between guilt and confusion after her kiss with Andre reignited old doubts about Bill's faithfulness. Andre sensed her distraction, though he mistook it for remorse. Pamela, who seemed to know everything before anyone else, told Anita that a storm was coming, and she wasn't wrong. Within days of Julian's arrival, the Dupree estate turned into a silent battleground of suspicion. Bill avoided eye contact with Vernon, who reminded him too much of the moral authority he never had. Nicole used the news to distract from her own failing marriage, while Leslie seemed unusually interested in the stranger, perhaps because she saw in him an opportunity to reshape power dynamics within the community. The young man, though soft-spoken, carried an energy that unsettled everyone. He wasn't after money, at least not at first, but something deeper: acknowledgement, revenge, or perhaps a chance to destroy the man who had unknowingly abandoned him. As the story unfolded, Julian's past began to merge dangerously with the present. His adoptive mother, now dying in a Maryland hospital, had confessed the truth weeks before she passed, that his real father was a man named Bill who once worked for a Dupree-affiliated paper. She had stolen him after his birth, aided by a nurse who was later paid to disappear. The woman had done it out of love, or so she said, to save the baby from a scandal that would ruin everyone involved. Julian spent years piecing together fragments of her story: birth certificates, bank statements, letters with Dupree signatures, until finally tracing his way to Fairmont Crest. Yet his arrival was not purely about finding his father, he was already entangled with someone inside the community. Weeks before appearing publicly, he had been secretly meeting Eva, who believed him to be a potential investor in one of her charity projects. Their encounters were emotional, charged, and ultimately dangerous when truth collided with attraction. Behind the facade of reconciliation, Julian carried a hidden agenda. He had evidence suggesting that Bill was not only his father but also responsible for covering up a financial scheme that destroyed his mother's reputation and led to her disappearance. Those documents, faded but damning, painted Bill as a man who chose ambition over integrity. Julian had waited for the right moment to reveal them, and Fairmont Crest, with its tangled relationships and political ambitions, was the perfect stage. Every conversation, every shared glance between Julian and Bill, became a silent duel. Bill sensed something but could not grasp the full scope of danger. Danny began to notice her husband's growing anxiety, his secretive phone calls, and sleepless nights. When she stumbled upon an old photo hidden in Bill's study, a picture of a younger Bill with a woman who looked eerily like Julian, her world cracked open. As gossip spread, Anita grew increasingly concerned about the Dupree family's stability. She warned Danny to stay clear of any renewed scandals, especially those tied to Bill's past. But it was too late. The young man's resemblance to Bill was undeniable, and whispers spread through Fairmont Crest like wildfire. Julian soon became both a fascination and a threat, a reminder of every buried sin that this community tried to erase. Even worse, a DNA test confirmed what everyone feared: he was indeed Bill's biological son. The confirmation shattered Bill's composure. He became a man split between guilt and defiance, desperate to protect what remained of his marriage while trying to mend a relationship that had never begun. But Julian wanted more than a father's apology. He wanted control, retribution, and validation from a world that had long ignored him. Fairmont Crest began to feel cursed. Tensions grew not just within the Dupree family but among their rivals, who saw Julian's revelation as an opportunity. Joey whispered to Vanessa that this was divine justice, while Martin quietly investigated Julian's mother's case, fearing old legal cover-ups might surface. Even Ted saw potential leverage, realizing that exposing Bill could destabilize Danny emotionally and politically. In just a week, Julian transformed from a stranger into the most dangerous man in town. He knew too much, felt too deeply, and carried too much pain to be reasoned with. Yet beneath his rage, there was still a fragile, desperate hope, a child's longing for love from a father who had unknowingly abandoned him. That contradiction made him unpredictable, and it was that unpredictability that would eventually bring ruin to everyone around him. The aftermath of Julian's revelation tore Fairmont Crest apart. Bill withdrew into silence, haunted by the faces of both his wife and his newly found son, unable to bridge the emotional chasm between them. Danny tried to maintain her dignity, attending public functions with her usual grace, but privately she was unraveling. She blamed herself for trusting a man whose moral compass had always pointed toward chaos. Andre, seeing her pain, offered comfort, but his intentions grew complicated as his old feelings returned. Julian, meanwhile, became more dangerous with each passing day. The community welcomed him politely, yet beneath the smiles were questions and fears: who had sent him, what did he want, and how much did he already know? Julian began to manipulate the cracks in everyone's relationships. He fed Nicole selective truths about Bill's past, causing her to confront Anita in ways that reignited long-buried resentment. He spoke privately with Joey, who saw in him an ally against the Dupree influence. Julian was careful, intelligent, and cruelly patient. He knew Fairmont Crest's greatest weapon wasn't violence, it was exposure. Within weeks, rumors began leaking online: falsified tax reports, scandalous old photos, whispers of political bribery involving Dupree-linked companies. While most were exaggerated, enough of it was true to damage reputations permanently. Danny's career at the foundation suffered, her donors pulling out after anonymous messages linked her husband to decades-old corruption. Bill, cornered, tried to reason with Julian, offering him acknowledgement and inheritance, but the young man refused any form of reconciliation. He wanted not wealth, but justice, the kind that left scars. The true horror came when Julian's obsession with revenge turned personal. He discovered that his mother hadn't vanished voluntarily, she had been silenced. The night before her disappearance, she had planned to expose a network of illicit deals involving Fairmont contractors. Someone powerful had intervened. Julian's investigation led him to documents implicating Bill's closest friend, a man who still lived in the Crest. When Julian confronted him, the encounter ended violently, and within days, police sirens pierced the serenity of the gated neighborhood. The victim was found dead, the scene staged as a robbery, but the residents knew better. Fear spread through the community. Danny began to suspect Julian's involvement, yet part of her pitied him: his grief, his loneliness, the way he looked at her not as an enemy but as the woman who had everything he'd been denied. That pity would be her undoing. As winter crept over Maryland, Fairmont Crest's facade began to rot. Bill's finances collapsed under legal scrutiny. Dani distanced herself emotionally, choosing to focus on rebuilding the foundation with Andre's help, but that only fueled Bill's paranoia. He started drinking again, consumed by guilt and humiliation. Julian watched from afar, satisfied but empty, realizing revenge offered no comfort. When his mother's killer was never officially charged, he took matters into his own hands. One stormy night, Bill disappeared. The next morning, his car was found near the cliffs overlooking the Dupree estate. There was no body, only a letter addressed to Dani and Julian. It read like a confession, though parts of it felt manipulated, as if someone had rewritten the ending. Some believed Bill took his own life, others whispered Julian had finished what destiny began. No one would ever know for sure, but the silence that followed was worse than any truth. Fairmont Crest became a shadow of its former self. Dani stopped attending public events, Andre grew distant, and Anita could barely hold her family together. The Dupree matriarch's dinners turned from celebrations into quiet reminders of everything lost. Julian vanished soon after Bill's disappearance, leaving behind only the same unanswered question: did he come seeking love, or destruction? Months later, a body washed ashore miles away, unrecognizable, but wearing Bill's ring. Dani collapsed when she saw it, though she refused to believe it was over. In her mind, Fairmont Crest had claimed another soul, another chapter of pain. The community that once symbolized wealth and status had become a mausoleum of secrets. By the time spring arrived, the Dupree family was unrecognizable. Dani lived alone in the guest house, estranged from her siblings and haunted by dreams of Bill standing by the gates, silently blaming her for everything. The residents spoke of Julian in hushed tones, calling him the ghost who broke the gates from within. Anita withdrew from public life, leaving Nicole to take control, while Andre left Fairmont Crest altogether, unable to bear the weight of so much tragedy. Yet even as life moved on, something lingered: rumors of a hidden file in Bill's office, containing proof that Julian was not his son after all. If true, it meant the entire nightmare was built on a lie. But no one dared to open the file. Fairmont Crest had already consumed too many truths, and this one, like all the rest, was safer buried. In the end, Beyond the Gates became more than the title of their world, it was a warning. No secret stayed silent forever, no love survived untainted, and every family, no matter how powerful, eventually met the ghosts of its own making. And so, as the dust settles over Fairmont Crest, what began as the return of a lost son ends as a haunting reminder that no one ever truly escapes their past. The gates that once promised security now feel like prison walls, holding within them the echoes of shattered dreams and silent regrets. Bill's legacy lies in ruins, Dani's love has turned to sorrow, and Julian, whether victim or villain, has vanished into the night, leaving behind questions no one dares to answer. In their pursuit of truth, they uncovered a darkness far greater than any of them imagined, a darkness born not of strangers but of their own choices. The Dupree family stands divided, the crest itself scarred by scandal and grief, and those who remain must learn to live among the ruins of what they once called perfection. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how love, when built on secrets, becomes a weapon. Every character has lost something precious: trust, innocence, peace. And while time may soften their pain, it cannot erase the stain of what has been done. The truth that destroyed Bill now hangs over Fairmont Crest like a curse, a reminder that behind every gate lies another secret waiting to be unearthed. As the camera pans away from the mansion's dimly lit windows, one can almost hear the whispers of those who once ruled its halls, voices pleading, warning, and mourning. The lost son came seeking justice, but in doing so, he exposed the fragility of everyone's soul. In the world of Beyond the Gates, every ending is merely the beginning of another heartbreak. Because here, redemption is fleeting, forgiveness is costly, and love always demands the ultimate price.